Welcome to Breaking News. We are covering live an animal rights trial, one of the most breakthrough historic trials for the animal rights movement. It's going on right now in Sonoma County, California. Two people, it started out with a lot of people, but two animal rights leaders are on trial. It's been a crazy day at court. We're going to go straight out to Carla Cabral. Carla, the basic facts of this case: 70 ducks and chickens removed from 3 factory farms 5 years ago. It's all been whittled down to 2 people facing conspiracy to commit trespass and trespass. Bring us the very latest on day 1 of court. Can you hear us, Carla?
Well, court has just let... I'm right here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Okay. Cassie is about to talk about the trial right now, so maybe I'll put her on and you guys can get an update, okay?
Hi, everyone. Yeah. Using the mic just to make sure people can hear. Some people may still be trickling out, but I think pretty much everyone's out, so I just want to give an update on what happened so far. Court is over for the day. We didn't know beforehand the judge would be busy in the afternoon, but she said that when we finally started close to 11 that she would be unavailable in the afternoon. So yeah, we're done for the day. Lunch is coming, breeds are coming. So we'll be eating before we go do the vigil at the slaughterhouse. But I just wanted to update people about what happened. You should also follow Sonoma Trial on Twitter because updates are being posted there. And also join Unchained TV. Right now it's just me, so you're seeing it live, but Unchained TV is discussing the trial throughout. So you can get updates there. But basically, the very first thing that happened was the prosecutor, the deputy district attorney who's leading the prosecution, Robert Weiner, dismissed me from the case as expected. And my lawyer at the time, not my lawyer anymore, but he jumped in to co-represent Priya. So we haven't lost him, which is great. Isaac said, my client wants to make a statement to the court. Is that okay? I kind of thought the judge would say no, but she said, do you advise it could be harmful to the other defendants? And he said, I don't take a position on it, but I don't think it will be harmful, in very lawyer speak. And then she asked the prosecutor, Weiner, and he said, absolutely, she's had these charges for 5 years. If she wants to make a statement, that's fine. So that was nice. So I got to stand up and just super briefly, I didn't want to take a lot of time, say that since I'm no longer going to trial and I'm not going to have the opportunity to be found not guilty by a jury, I just want to state on the record that I don't believe I've done anything wrong by trying to help suffering animals who are facing criminal animal cruelty. So, which of course Korean would believe too, and hopefully they'll get the chance to have their names cleared by the jury. So, Isaac's here. Thanks, Isaac. Thank you for doing that for me. It's probably embarrassing. Yeah, and so then I was. Oh, Chris is here too. Oh, hi, Chris. Thank you so much. And okay, I got kicked out because there wasn't a seat, but then Diane gave me.
I want to go out to Curtis. Curtis Volmer, you are also out there. Can you please tell me what you see? Because your signal is better than Carla's. So go up there and tell us what you're seeing and hearing.
Yeah, I'll try to get you up close here. Hold on.
The Farm Bureau, the California Farm Bureau and Sonoma County Farm Bureau ones are still pending, and they'll be discussed next week when we resume. But the Whole Foods, Costco, and American Humane Association subpoenas were basically denied because they filed motions to quash, which the judge granted. So as of right now, they're not being required to respond to the subpoenas that the defense filed with evidence of the conditions at their suppliers. So maybe those will be refiled in another way. I don't know. That stuff's harder to talk about. So I'll see if anyone else wants to talk.
Well, they can be filed in another way, and they have been filed in another way. We just have been working with a process server that's a little slow. But the bigger point here is the amount of time and effort these large corporations are using to suppress very, very simple and obvious information. They claim on their own websites they are transparent about it. So a lot of you didn't understand the substantive argument that was being made today because there wasn't a lot of context given. We weren't provided the documents, and I don't even know if the judge read the documents. But all we're asking for is audits and records relating to things that the prosecution has already cited as a basis for their claim that the animals at these factory farms are well treated, right? Audits, records, inspections by Whole Foods and Costco. And in theory, these companies are open to their consumers about everything. In fact, if you Google animal welfare Whole Foods, the first thing that comes up is what makes our animal products different. The first word is literally transparency. And yet, when it comes to actually being asked for that transparency, suddenly these corporations don't just resist it, but they hire corporate attorneys from all over the country. I think in Costco's case, there are 7 or 8 attorneys CC'd in this case that have been working on this matter. Whole Foods case, I think there's at least 3 to litigate these matters to prevent anyone from obtaining the transparency they promised the world, right? And that's how ridiculous it is. And I think the judge was incorrect. The legal issue upon which the judge granted the motion to quash for Whole Foods, Costco, and American Humane was a requirement under California Penal Code that when you subpoena a witness, they have to respond by acknowledging their date of birth and their, I think it's their date of birth and their address. Or maybe it's their date of birth and their phone number. I don't remember what it is. But that requirement only applies to a natural person, not to a corporation, because a corporation doesn't have a date of birth. A corporation is not a person. A dog is a person. A human being is a person. You and I are persons, but a corporation is not. And there's no date of birth for a corporation. But yeah, I mean, I want to acknowledge that we made some mistakes ourselves. We didn't personally serve, because the alternative process is to actually physically hand the documents to the relevant witness. For those of you who've been through law school, it's like Civil Procedure 101. There's this complicated process that you have to use to try and get someone into court, where you physically hand someone documents. You've probably seen it in a movie where there's a processor who comes up and throws documents in someone's face and says, "You've been served." There have been a lot of revisions to the law to try and modernize, because after all, nowadays to give someone notice, we don't typically require you to physically mail something, physically hand something to someone, because we have this thing called email. And that was the penal code provision that we were trying to cite to argue that even if we had not literally, and we have, but even if we had not literally thrown a document at the corporation's face physically, they still were on notice that these documents were at issue. And it's clear they are on notice, because all their attorneys are here. We've been corresponding with them. They've been fighting with them. This is just another example of the legal system has all these ridiculous, convoluted, counterproductive measures to prevent people from getting basic justice, right? Because if you have a fancy corporate lawyer, or Costco and Whole Foods case, literally, half a dozen fancy corporate lawyers fighting these issues, you can fight them effectively. Well, if you're an individual criminal defendant, we have a pretty sophisticated legal team, 3 attorneys working on this case. I've done a lot of commercial litigation, so I understand service. But if you're just an average criminal defender, or even an average criminal defense lawyer who doesn't have in the case of Costco and Whole Foods, literally a multi-billion-dollar budget just for your litigation, setting aside all the other things. They probably have multi-billions. Amazon clearly does a multi-billion-dollar budget just for its litigation. Then you can't do these sorts of things, right? And so it's just another example of how corrupt and broken our criminal justice system is. But yeah, I was pretty surprised today by a lot of things. Obviously, you all heard about Cassie's case, and she probably already spoke about it. Where's Cassie? Yeah, I don't know how she's feeling about it, but I know she had mixed feelings because, on the one hand, obviously it's a relief, and I'm sure for her family it's a huge relief. On the other hand, I think she wanted to fight this case, and she really did believe that we had the right to rescue these animals. So that's the biggest development that occurred legally today. It's official, she's out. But the other thing that's just pretty interesting is, from my perspective, is the reluctance of the judge to take on these issues. She's very tentative and trying to push things back. And on the one hand, is pushing these back and trying to rush things along. But on the other hand, is obviously a little overwhelmed by the amount of briefing. She said, I don't remember if she said this on the record, that there's 1,000 pages of documents she's been sent. And that's true. There's a lot of very kind of sophisticated legal arguments being offered her. But again, we have a right to that. And we're the ones whose freedom is on the line. So these arguments are good faith arguments. They're arguments that have been supported by people like Kristen Still at Harvard Law School. Many of you probably saw the tweet that DXC put out about Erwin Termininski, who is one of the most renowned First Amendment scholars in the nation. And he heard about the case and said, I want to write something in support of you all, because I think what's happening to you is unconstitutional. And I think we're going to get similar supportive opinions and letters and briefs, including something from the ACLU. I just saw it in my mailbox this morning. The ACLU actually sent a letter to the court arguing that the gag order against us is unconstitutional. And that's kind of what we're trying to do.
You're talking about the gag order right now. You're on Jane on Unchained
Oh, okay.
TV.
Well,
Are you allowed? Should
No,
they
I should probably not be
on?
on the media talk. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't realize there was media. So what you all saw, I did not actually realize there was media talking. So, but I'll just stop now and say, super grateful to all of you.
Okay, wow.
Sorry,
Well, there you go. He's talking outside court. There is still a gag order. He was not aware, I guess, that the media was present because we use modern media where we hold up cell phones. So we're going to get reaction from this. Nathan, you're the attorney. So first of all, let's make it clear, Wayne Hsiung, the defendant, was not aware that Unchained TV was live recording what he said. Can you weigh in on that fact, since they gagged the defense and their lawyers, and then Wayne, who's defending himself, comes out and talks? What do you make of it all?
Well, I think it was pretty apparent in real time based on Wayne's reaction to learning that he actually was on video and it was being transmitted to your program, that there was no intent to violate the gag order, and that as soon as he realized that he could be running afoul of that, he quickly made it clear that he had that the camera should move away. So I wouldn't be worried about it. I don't think he spoke of anything that really was any substance that the order was meant to prevent. So I don't think it's a big deal.
All right, so let's really just dive into this incredible trial. We've got a very, very, well, I want to know, is he still speaking, Curtis? Curtis, could we get a sense from you of what happened in court today without hearing Wayne?
So no, Wayne is not speaking right now. Kitty Jones is speaking. I could put her back on for you all. Yeah,
let's hear what she has to
I
say.
think we're planning a vigil, and she's given a quick briefing on that.
Yeah, and when they say, I'll let you walk over, when they say they're planning a vigil, the Sonoma rescue trial also involves a convergence, as those folks, because a huge number of people actually walked in to rescue these chickens and these ducks 5 years ago. So this is really a mass movement. So we're going to hear a little bit more from Curtis when he gets up there. Let's see if Carla's back. Carla?
Yeah, so I can tell you, I was inside the courtroom, and the judge is very strict. I can tell you this is a very strict judge that goes by the book, by the rules. So the judge was laying out the schedule, and it's going to be a long schedule. She is planning for this opening statements to probably not even occur until the 26th. That's how far away we're talking for the opening statements. So the schedule, there are a lot of days off, a lot of conflict, a lot of half days. So just so everybody knows that we're looking at opening statements possibly not even occurring until the 26th. They're rolling out
That is
banner.
completely crazy.
So
I want to get reaction. Donnie Moss, what's your reaction to the fact that this is being stretched out so far? There are those who say it's specifically in order to keep the media from being interested. What do you think? And
I think, by virtue of the fact that the two people who are being prosecuted are sort of known leaders in the movement, part of me wonders, and I know this is the judge and not the prosecution necessarily, but a part of me wonders the extent to which this whole county is sort of conspiring against the leaders of a movement that's engaging in open rescue and encouraging activists elsewhere to engage in open rescue. A lot of people were arrested and charged with felonies during these open rescues, yet only 2 are going to trial, and 2 leaders. And so I wonder, and I'm not a lawyer, if this is part of an overall strategy to just scare people away from engaging in open rescue.
Very good point. And it's quite likely you're looking at some of the animals who were involved in, and some of the defendants, they've gotten rid of all the defenses except for Wayne and Priya. Cassie, who's in the middle, they got rid of her. They dropped all the charges. So what you're seeing here is kind of an overview of Direct Action Everywhere explaining the case. Again, the bottom line is that about 5 years ago, a lot of people, 100 or more, went into 3 factory farms in Sonoma County and they took out 70 birds. They say all of them needed immediate medical attention. So we want to go back to Curtis in a second, but first I want to get Renee King-Sonen's reaction to everything you're seeing. You are the founder of the Rowdy Girl Sanctuary, a former cattle ranch turned into a vegan sanctuary. You know the cattle industry like the back of your hand. What is your reaction to what's happening in court?
Well, I am just I'm just floored. I was actually at one of those convergences with DXE when that man came out and almost got like trapped up in that contraption. I was actually there with DXE, and I saw some of those birds come out, and it is horrific, the conditions, and the fact that they're not allowing the conditions of the actual establishments to be discussed, the fact that they're laying all this out so it's just conspiracy to trespass, not burglary or theft, to me is so telling. It is so telling that they're doing everything they can to minimize anyone from seeing or knowing the true conditions. They don't want they're I think this gag order is going to backfire on them. I mean, it is absolutely atrocious that they would even attempt to do such a thing when animal agriculture, has the rights to speak and do whatever they want to do. It just is just beyond the comprehension to me.
So you are looking at pictures of what's happening live at the courthouse. It's a convergence. I want to show you full screen this image. This is happening outside the courthouse right now. So Ellen Dent, you've covered and you've been at many of these convergent type protests. What are these people saying?
I mean, they're fighting for the right to rescue, obviously. Their signs say it all. You see how many people are out there. I mean, this is such a strong presence of activists that are out there supporting the right to rescue, supporting the right for these animals to be seen as individuals, as someone's, not some things, or it's, or what other species as terms we use to refer to them. They are individuals. They are suffering in these factory farms and these slaughterhouses, and they deserve to be rescued. They deserve to not be in these situations. We have absolutely no right to do this to them or to take their lives or torture them for their short lives that they have.
Now, I want to go back to Donnie Moss. Donnie, they're breaking up. The court is over for the day. In fact, let me go to Curtis. Curtis, I have to ask you this question, okay? Let me unmute you. Unmute yourself so you can talk to us, please. Yeah. I mean, what the hell happened? It was supposed to be a lunch break. Now court's over for the day. Opening statements. When is jury selection starting? Is there any other media? I have to say, I think it's weird that, at first I thought, well, Wayne's talking outside court. Then I realized maybe no mainstream media is there.
There isn't any mainstream media here. There's been a couple local press outlets. There was a piece on one of the ABC Bay Area affiliates last night, but so far there hasn't been any major press attention, national press attention, I should say, for the courthouse or for this case. But as far as things that went on today, you heard the best from Wayne as far as what happened. I was not actually in the courtroom today. I was kind of just outside mingling with people that didn't get to go inside because we couldn't fit everybody in because we had so many people here. One of the things to me that seems really, really strange about the case and is really interesting is how this whole thing started with so many people. I think it was 8 people and 8 felonies each. And then now it's down to 2 people with a felony and a misdemeanor each. And a lot of this transpired within the last week. Cassie just being dropped, and then a few days ago, they removed the burglary and theft charges.
Yeah.
And this to me is them doing what they can do. Bob Weiner, who is the prosecutor, everybody should get to know that name. Robert Bob Weiner, he's the lead prosecutor on this for the DA's office. Seems to be a pretty sharp tack. Seems to have been following the Utah trial and the Merced trial, and is doing whatever he can to try to keep out the conditions of the farms and keep out any mention of animal cruelty or any discussion of animal cruelty. And by removing the burglary and theft charges, that takes a lot of wind out of our sails. You know, like, wait a minute, they didn't take anything. We're not charging them with burglary or theft. Nothing was stolen. Why do we need to talk about the conditions of the things that they didn't steal or that they didn't take? So it's an interesting tactic that, again, was employed 3 days ago. You know, the burglary and theft charges were dropped this week to try to keep out those charges. And I think that Cassie being removed was another kind of strategic move on their part. Cassie is extremely likable. She's young, she's beautiful, appeal to the jury. And you know what? Let's just get her out of here. We don't want her in here, pleasing the jury and being likable and all that. So lot of strange things here, but not unbelievable.
Wow. Whoa, is that shocking? I want to go to Lindsay Baker. Lindsay, you are a California voter. You have gathered signatures for some of these propositions to eliminate the very cruelty they say continues to go on, despite the fact that the people spoke with Prop 2 back in 2008 that only went into effect years later in 2015 that supposedly bans battery cages. How do you, as a California voter, feel about what you're seeing today? Unmute.
I'm just appalled by what I'm seeing. I'm appalled on one side, but I'm also happy because it's being exposed. I think they have a tiger by the tail in this case, and whether the prosecutor wins or loses, they're going to lose, because this case is going to bring to fore the injustice that is going on. It's so obvious, and the way they try to keep maneuvering, it just reminds me of what's going on in our political system, and people are fed up with this, and people are going to take action. This case, I in my heart feel like the case is going to be dismissed, and I hope, my heart to God's ears. But
well, you know what? That's a very good possibility. I want to play just a 40-second clip of Wayne talking about this case, and then we're going to go back to
going to the front lines and walking into a factory farm or slaughterhouse, and especially rescuing an animal, is the most transformative experience I've had in my life, by far.
And that's exactly what hundreds of us did.
In May of 2018, I did not walk into a single barn. I did not touch a single chicken. All I did was talk about other people doing the same, was train and encourage other people to do the thing that we knew was right, that we had a legal opinion from one of the most distinguished legal scholars in the state of California. Prosecute me is just the idea that, all right, look, at the end of the day, it's not just these three people who care about animals and care about corporate abuses. The open rescue movement and the movement to protect animals is about all of us.
All right, Donnie Moss, now it's down to two people. You actually have some hands-on experience with what happened all these years ago. It's taken 5 years for them to get to court. And then just days before court, they switch gears, drop theft and burglary charges, drop one of the most personable defendants, as you mentioned, attractive, articulate Cassie King. And not to say that the remaining defenders are not attractive and articulate, but they obviously felt she would appeal to a jury. Take us back to what actually happened.
Yeah. So I understand why the prosecution wanted to drop those charges. That would have enabled the defense to show the cruelty. I was there, and I can remember, and this is before the pandemic, this is a lifetime ago, I can remember walking up with hundreds of other activists up to the gates of a duck farm. And already there were maybe a dozen very young activists. They were chained to each other, and each of them had a dead duck in their laps. And these were ducks who they took out of a garbage can on the property. This is before the vast majority of activists even arrived. We were bussed there. It was a couple hours outside of San Francisco in Sonoma County. And these activists had already arrived. They had already taken these ducks out of the garbage cans, chained themselves. They had already conducted an open rescue inside. There were probably still activists inside when we arrived. I know there were, because several of them had chained themselves to the conveyor belt, which then went on, and someone almost got killed in the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
But it really struck me how horrible the conditions were for these ducks. And, you could see it by just looking at the bodies of the ducks, and in talking to the activists who had been inside and seen the conditions. There were hundreds of activists there that day. And the footage that you're showing now, I think, is of a different event. And Jane, I could send you the footage from the duck farm that
Let me just say, there's 3 farms involved. There were 3 incidents. It's very hard to parse them. We're showing up footage of, basically, since all this has been boiled down into a conspiracy case, this was the footage you saw was one of those actions. There were 3 farms that had people go in and take out a total of 70 chickens and ducks. Continue on.
And so the last point I'll make is that you had hundreds of activists outside protesting in solidarity with the activists who were inside conducting the rescues and exposing the conditions. And along came what looked like an army of police in riot gear. And it was so disproportionate to what was going on outside. You could have thought that we were engaging in some sort of violence, when in fact the activists were simply rescuing ducks who were sick and dying. And the juxtaposition of the peaceful activists with flowers next to these riot police was really staggering.
It's unbelievable. And again, the activists who are now put on trial begged the prosecutors who are prosecuting them to look into the conditions inside these factory farms, because they alleged that these factory farms are violating the law, because California does have animal welfare laws, and there aren't exceptions for factory farmed animals. And indeed, California, back in 2008, I know I collected signatures, passed Prop 2, which increases those protections for animals. And their contention, Nathan, is that the factory farms are violating Prop 2. There has never been a prosecution for violation of Prop 2, which says that animals have to have a certain amount of space. And since it mostly applies to chickens and ducks, they went into those chickens and ducks factories, because we don't have a lot of pig gestation crates in California. So it was primarily a law about enforcement of standards for animals. So the prosecution not only did not prosecute the corporations, nor did they investigate the corporations, to our understanding. They went out and they prosecuted the people who brought this to their attention.
The common thread in the cases that we've seen over this past year is sort of this upside down world in which there are laws in the books to protect animals. There are people who are asking law enforcement to enforce those laws to protect animals. And when they're met with resistance, or they turn and look away and don't do their jobs, activists are left with no choice. I mean, what else can they do? They're well aware from investigations, from New York Times exposés, from undercover, Mercy for Animals videos, and so many other ways of what's happening inside behind those doors. What else is there left to do? So they go in, they try to rescue sick and dying animals. They don't just open the doors and let everybody out. They're trying to follow the law the best that they can. And these prosecutors and law enforcement, instead, they go after
We want to try to go back to Carla Cabral on the scene. Carla, what is happening now? Your signal is wonderful. Just unmute yourself and take it away.
So yeah, everybody is still waiting outside of the courthouse right now. I wanted to give you an update. So something interesting, one of the only things that happened today inside the courtroom was talk of different companies having been served to produce documents pertinent to this case. So Whole Foods, Costco, American Humane had all been served electronically so that they needed to produce documents relevant for the defense, and none of them said that they were actually served. So there was a lot of back and forth about whether you can serve somebody electronically or did it have to be in person, and documents needing to come from Texas and other states, even though the companies themselves are in California. I don't know if one of our brilliant minds here can talk a little bit about that. That was sort of what Wayne was speaking about, but that was pretty much what the entire morning was spent on in the courtroom.
Now, let me ask you, because it's come up, obviously, the gag order. And I want to stress that Wayne was not aware that we were live because we are on phones, which you can't tell. It's not like ABC News with a giant camera, that he was just speaking to some supporters outside the courtroom. But did the gag order get addressed, Carla?
No, the judge said that she was not going to hear anything regarding the gag order today, that would be taken care of next week. So as far as we know, they are still under that gag order until the judge makes a ruling next week.
I don't understand, and maybe you could tell us, Nathan, can the judge just simply say, I'm going to refuse to talk about my gag order? You know, it's America. We have the First Amendment, and it is the first one, the First Amendment, but I'm just not going to address that.
You know, unfortunately, justice can move slowly, and the process to appeal the judge's order would take probably lot more than the week that she's waiting to address it. So I don't think there's much recourse, immediately. What's a shame is, of course, that it's issued in the first place. My understanding is that there were no factual findings, and it requires a real strong basis to issue a gag order. Generally, a gag order is issued for the purpose of not tainting, of people speaking out, so that the potential jury pool isn't compromised. They're not tainted with one side's version of the evidence. Here, you only have the defendants gagged. You don't have the prosecution gagged. You don't have the witnesses from the factory farms gagged. The judge didn't issue, my understanding is, didn't issue a reason for issuing such a stringent gag. There are much, much lesser remedies that could have been done here. And generally speaking, what's done in these situations is juries are instructed. They are instructed to ignore all media, and they're questioned during voir dire whether they've seen anything that would, that would keep them from being impartial. And that's the way it's done. Curtis said earlier, there isn't a single mainstream media outlet camera there. So I don't really understand a full gag in a case like this.
I want to go back to Curtis Vollmer, who's on the scene and who is quite famous in his own right for entanglements in similar situations where he was, let's say, peacefully leafleting, and he was basically threatened by law enforcement. And in fact, there was a settlement, and he's giving a lot of the money that he got to animal sanctuaries. But tell me about your reaction, having been through this, Curtis, to the fact that there is a gag order and that this trial is being spread out. As somebody who was in mainstream media for 35 years, I can tell you that makes it a lot harder for a reporter assigned to a case to cover it. If you get, okay, I got 5 days on this case, but if they say they're going to stretch it out for a month, I personally believe, this is my opinion, they're trying to say, oh, don't pay attention to this. It's going to go on forever. Do something else. Curtis.
Sure, I think it's absurd. I think it's a judicial overreach for sure. We heard coming into this that this judge is particularly strict, so this fits the bill. Another thing that interesting that happened today that wasn't mentioned. My girlfriend who's here, Katya, that you met a couple weeks ago, Jane. She's an artist and she does drawings. And at the last trial, she did a lot of sketches, courtroom sketches. She sat up front and made some really nice courtroom sketches that we put on social media and some other places. And she was in there again today, and she got done with one of the drawings. And apparently the judge came over and said, "You're not allowed to be doing that. You didn't get permission," and took the drawing away and asked for her full name and her date of birth, and said that if you do this again, there's going to be consequences.
Oh my God.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Oh my God. Excuse me. Where are we? Is this
Oh my
America?
Oh my
Is
God.
this America? I mean, I need to get reaction. Renee King Sonnen of the Rowdy Girl Century in Texas.
Oh my God. I'm just like, are you kidding me? A drawing, an artist. I was sitting here listening to Donnie, and I realized that is the convergence I was at. I was asked to speak there to all of those 600 activists that day. And I was unbelievably beyond shocked at the juxtaposition, like Donnie said, of this brigade of like army men coming in with guns and tasers and who knows what all, and shields, and here we are all there, and peaceful activists, and these activists, all they were wanting to do is to protect the rights of animals that are suffering needlessly, dying inside of these factory farms. The fact that they're gagging these people. I mean, I have met so many wonderful people at that convergence, because I was there for like 5 days during that whole action. And it's all just coming back to me like it was yesterday, the way that I felt being a part of such an amazing moment in history, and to see that it's taken this long, and that they are being used, in my opinion, they are being used as pawns. This is going to backfire on them. They are wanting to continue the narrative that animals are things, they're entertainment, like Lolita that died. I mean, we've got to keep pushing that out. Animals are not clothing. They're not food. They're not entertainment. Animals are sentient. Here in Texas, the weather is 107 degrees today. And everybody here is on high alert. We are out there with around the clock right now, with ice, with fans, blowing water. We're making sure everybody is taken care of, because heat stroke is real. In these factories and these farms, no one cares inside. That is why they don't see anything.
I know it's upsetting. I've heard a lot of things. I've covered trials for more than 30 years. The O.J. Simpson trial, the Jodi Arias trial, the Casey Anthony trial, the Michael Jackson trial. I've never heard of a judge saying you can't do a courtroom sketch. Ellen Dent, as an activist and a mother, what is your reaction to this?
I am in disbelief. I don't know the protocol. It's probably a better question for Nathan, whether or not they can do that. I feel like they're taking away her freedom of speech. Yeah, like you said, is this America that she's not able to draw in there? I mean, it must be, I guess, somewhat of a compliment for her artistic skills that they did take offense to her drawing what was happening in the courtroom. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think that they are trying to silence us. I think they are trying to stop us, and it's not going to happen. These are warriors. They're going to keep going. They're going to keep fighting for other animals to have the same rights that we do, as long as they live. And no matter what happens in this trial, they're going to keep fighting, and they should know that. And honestly, we're going to look back on this in the future, or people, generations to come are going to look back at this in the future and be appalled that this was ever an issue.
Now, thank you, Ellen. I got to go to Nathan. Pamela Wisley is saying the judge should recuse herself. She's biased. Can they make a motion? I mean, I've never heard. It's like saying you can't take notes. It's so obvious they're trying to silence these two people. And I want to get to another comment in a second that I heard, and I don't know if it's true, but Nathan, can there be a move that this judge recuse his or herself? I don't know the name. I know there was a judge once in a pretrial hearing. I don't know if it's the same judge. Take it away.
I mean, a sketch is news reporting, right, Jane? I mean, it is like taking notes. It is like there being a reporter reporting on what is transpiring inside of a public courtroom. For this judge to do this, do I think it's grounds for a recusal? Sure. I mean, if it fits a pattern of decisions that are clearly abuse of powers and show her leanings one way or the other, I think so. If it's an isolated incident, probably not. But I will say this, it's a very important decision that she made. It might sound to some people like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just one sketch. But it is such a stunning First Amendment violation that I think that I know that it's grounds for what's called an Article 78 proceeding, which shows an abuse of power, an arbitrary and capricious decision. And I think it would be a ground ball for any judge who presided over that Article 78 to say this judge cannot order or take a sketch. It's absurd.
I want to go to Carla. Carla, what was the reaction? Were you in court did you see this? Because I honestly, of all the things that I've heard today, of all the things, that is truly the most shocking. I have never heard in any case I've ever been where there's no cameras allowed. She's already said no cameras. They gave some excuse that because there's no white noise machine near the bench when they approach the bench, like $30 for a white noise machine. Now she's trying to say you can't draw a sketch. I do believe that's something that could be the basis for a motion to recuse the judge. What is the reaction there, Carla?
I can tell you that it was a very tense moment. It happened very early on before anything else even happened, because the judge announced that she had received word that somebody was doing sketches, and she said that it was a matter of privacy. She made a statement that this is not a joke. This is not to be taken lightly, that there are procedures in place, that if we had wanted to have sketches done, that we would have to put in the proper paperwork in order to do that, and that she needed to confiscate that drawing. She luckily didn't take any of the other materials, but Katya was very compliant, said no problem, handed over the drawing, and she was allowed to stay inside the courtroom for the rest of the time. But the judge was extremely stern and made it a point that this was procedural, that any sort of documentation, we were scared we weren't even going to be allowed to take notes. So we got permission that we were allowed to take just written hands. We were allowed to have written notes, but nothing else, absolutely nothing.
Ellen Dent just texted me, stolen property. I mean, honestly, you got to think about that. She took the sketch away from, and in this day and age, everybody knows anybody's a journalist. You can go to school to get a journalism degree. I did. I went to NYU and I graduated with a BA in broadcast journalism. But some of the greatest journalists of our time do not have a degree in journalism. You are a reporter. Anybody with a cell phone is a reporter today. So by taking, I honestly think this is a First Amendment issue that you could get the ACLU involved. Donnie Moss, what are your thoughts on this? I think it's much more significant. It may have been something she did on the fly, this judge. And I'd like to know also, Carla, before I go to Donnie, what is the name of this judge? And I want to write it down. Unmute yourself, please. Thanks. Unmute.
Judge's name is Pasaglia.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Laura Pasaglia.
Okay. Laura Pasaglia. Donnie, what do you think they should do with this?
Well, I mean, I guess I would throw this back to the panel with a question, and that is, this is a second right to rescue trial where we feel like the defendants are really being treated unfairly. And I have to ask, if the judge in this county is presumably paid by taxpayers in this county, and are the factory farms that are the plaintiffs, are they also taxpayers in the county? I mean, is there a conflict of interest here? Is this judge trying to protect those who are paying her salary?
Judge takes sketch away in court from a spectator. I mean, oh my God. In America, a judge has taken a sketch away in court from a spectator. Okay? I have never heard of anything in all my years covering trial. I think it's very, very significant. Who do we have there? And thank you for unmuting and tell us about the experience. Go ahead. We're going to have.
So this is Katya. This is the thieving artist here. Katya, talk about your experience with getting the drawing taken away and everything, and how that whole thing went.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was drawing the judge because it was initially a different case, but I thought I just thought I'll do a head start and start drawing the judge, since I want to have a certain amount of sketches per day. So I just said I'm going to draw the judge, and I was drawing, and I was like really excited about it. And then after we were on a break, we came back, and then she points me out in the crowd, and she's like, "You stand up." And I stood up, and then she said, "What is your name?" And I said my name, and then she asked me to spell it, and so I spelled that. And then she said something in the lines of, "This is not a joke, and you're not allowed to film, you're not allowed to record or draw in the courtroom. And there's a paper," and she showed me a paper, and she said, "You're supposed to fill this out before drawing anything. So now we have your name, and you're no longer allowed to draw." And she said something like, "We have you on record now." And then she said, "We now have to confiscate your drawing." I only had one, which is of her, which was a really nice drawing of her. But one of the sheriffs or bailiffs came to me and took my drawing. And I was like, "There's no more." But he just checked anyway, just to make sure. I was like, "That's fine." And I asked her if I can stay in the courtroom. She said, "Yes, I'm just not allowed to draw." So now I submitted a form that she talked about. The person that is in charge of saying if I'm allowed to draw or not is on lunch right now. So they said they're going to call me back, and took my phone number. So that's the story.
I definitely think there should be some kind of silent auction where this sketch, if it's retrieved, is put on auction for the public to bid on, because it's going to go down in history. And Ellen Dent says maybe you have some thoughts on this, Ellen. Take it away.
Olivia, maybe she really liked your drawing and thought it was very flattering, or the opposite, and didn't want anyone to see it. But I think it's a compliment to your skills as an artist that she was either so offended or really liked it and might take it home and frame it.
I think she liked it. I was pretty proud of it. I'm very modest, but I went to art school and I've been drawing since I was 2. So I kind of know what I'm doing. So I was like, wow, this is great. And I'm excited to show it. But so she probably was like, wow, I want to put it on my fridge or something. I don't know.
Look, we're making light of this, but it's not. As somebody who's covered a lot of trials, there's nothing light about this. A picture tells 1,000 words, and in this case, a decision by the court tells 1,000 words. Lindsay Baker, as a citizen of California, and somebody I know who fought for Prop 12, which is at the Prop 2 and Prop 12, but Prop 2 is at the heart of this. I raised signatures as well. It passed in 2008, and it took years for it to be implemented in 2015. And there's never been a person who runs a factory farm ever brought up on charges that they violated Prop 2. These activists went in there. They say they saw violations of Prop 2, which is about how much room an animal has to move around, being violated left and right. They asked the prosecutors to investigate. There was no investigation. There was no prosecution. Instead, they arrest them and they prosecute the activists who brought the allegations to the authorities. Now you have a gag order. Now you have no cameras, no video, no photos, and then a sketch removed from somebody who is taking a sketch in a desperate attempt to document this court in the United States of America, Lindsay.
I would say that if I didn't know this was the truth, I would think it was some sort of insane movie that was, some Hollywood producer put together, because it's so absurd. And the fact that the judge basically said for basically no reason, she's going to not allow any of the footage to be shown because they reduced the charges and it's no longer relevant. The conditions are no longer relevant. Well, in my opinion, that's the most relevant part because it shows the cause of the activists going into the facility. And so without that, why would they be there in the first place other than to cause mischief? And the fact that everything is being suppressed down to pictures is going to backfire. It's only going to give more. So if they're suppressing having the media there, and now even a photo is media because it could show an emotional feeling, then what they're doing is just blowing the story up. They're helping. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. I think that's also, you just raised a very good point. Curtis, this is the story. I think you could even get it in the New York Times on this one, and DXE has gotten in the New York Times numerous times for their investigations. I think it could be a really good mainstream news story. As a reporter, I know you want a hook. And this is a hook. A judge who took a sketch away because it would appear that this county is so intent on, now there was a phrase, it's a speciesist phrase, and I don't want to misquote anybody. We don't need to name names, but somebody on the law enforcement side was supposedly quoted as saying they wanted to cut the head of the snake off Direct Action Everywhere. Carla, we don't need to get into details of who, but is that something that you've heard they say? Because that is also telling.
Yes, that is a correct report that it was stated that they wanted to cut the head off the snake for us.
So they've reduced all the charges to the two leaders, the two co-founders, I should say, of Direct Action Everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the significance there?
Look, they are looking to see if they can get rid of top leadership and that somehow that will lead to this organization crumbling. But what they don't understand is that this is a horizontal organization. This is not a top-down organization. We are all empowered and we are all activists who do actions because we are choosing to do those actions. If they are going to prosecute one of us, they need to prosecute all of us. Hashtag prosecute me, right? We're looking for them to understand that this is much larger than Wayne and Priya. This is about all of us doing what we know is right.
We just got a photograph of the judge. I'm going to show it to you now, courtesy of one of our supporters, Mick Davudian. And there she is. I'm going to put myself on screen. Okay, there is the judge in question. That is the judge, Laura Pasaglia. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Judge, we invite you on Unchained TV anytime to explain why you took that sketch from somebody in the courthouse who was sketching after banning cameras. Still photos have been banned, video cameras have been banned, and now you have taken a sketch from somebody who was sketching in the courtroom. What's next? Are you going to take notes that reporters are writing? Are you going to take the notes out of the reporter's hands? I'm asking, and I invite you on anytime to respond to that question. Back with our fantastic legal panel and activist panel. I want to be fair and give everybody a chance to speak. Donnie Moss, what is your reaction to all of today's developments? The gag order remains in place. She refused to discuss the gag order, according to what those who were in court said. She's taken a sketch that somebody's made away from that person inside court, saying that you have to fill out a form in order to sketch. What's your reaction? What's the big picture here?
It seems to me like Sonoma County is desperate to protect these factory farms that pay tax dollars, that employ people, and are probably among the larger businesses in the county. And they're willing to now take more extreme measures in order to protect these factory farms from the activists who are trying to expose not only the cruelty, but all of the legal violations. We know that these factory farms are not complying with the law that bans the most intensive forms of confinement. And we know that they're breaking just basic animal cruelty laws in terms of access to food and water and access to medical care for sick animals. They just want these activists to go away, and now they're taking more extreme measures, turning up the heat. But I can't help but wonder if they look out the window and they see the convergence of activists and are saying to themselves, is the same thing going to happen here that happened in the past two Right to Rescue trials?
Again, we are covering breaking news. I think this should be on the front page of every mainstream media organization, that there is this trial going on in Sonoma County. And remember, this isn't like some faraway place. California is a blue state. California is considered progressive. California is considered one of the most environmentally friendly states. And yet here in Sonoma County, which is just north of San Francisco, you have a trial that's going on where you see two people who are there at the courthouse, where the girlfriend of the young man with the sunglasses right there, Curtis Vollmer, was doing a sketch, and they took the sketch away from her. There's no cameras allowed, no video cameras, no still cameras. The defendants have been gagged. They've dropped at the last second the burglary and theft charges, which generally observers say, and even the judge was quoted as saying, now the conditions inside the factory farms are not relevant. So what does that all boil down to? Renee King-Sonnen, you're in Texas, where you might think it'd be more likely for something like this to happen in Texas, but no, it's happening here in California.
Yeah, it all boils down to, they really are desperate. They are desperate to cut off, as they said, what they think is the head. But what they really don't realize is that, and with social media, with so much activism going around the globe now, not just plant-based people that eat plants and are plant-based, but I mean true activists that would die in the streets for these animals, people that will put their life on the line. There's so many of us out there right now. I remember the day I told my husband, I will go out there, I will put my life on the line for these animals if you take those cows to the sale barn one more time. I remember that moment, that it was seared in my consciousness that I would die for this cause. And that's what they don't understand, that there are these activists, the DXE activists, and those like us all over the world will die for this cause. It is a horizontal It is a horizontal movement. And I did Google, Jane, there's something in here about some sketch artist policy. I don't know what that is, but I haven't been able to really read it. But evidently they do have some sort of policy about sketches. So that's probably what kind of paper or whatever they said she needed to fill out. They're grasping at straws right now. They're just trying to do any and everything they can to to prevent us from having a voice.
Wow. I want to play, you talked about these people who are willing to do anything. There's a short clip that really tells the story with music underneath it. It's less than a minute. So we were asked to share that video, and we did. Just share it. So let me get back to the case. There's been so much craziness involving this breaking news story that I really want to get back to the two charges, okay? So the two charges are conspiracy to commit trespass and trespass. Now, when I hear that at first, I say trespass. Oh my gosh, that's what I did when I was a teenager, you know, in the summer, jumping into neighbors' pools without permission. It sounds like, not really a very serious case. But Nathan, as a former prosecutor, you were an assistant district attorney in Manhattan. Why can they send Wayne and Priya away on this if they're successful?
Because they can. It doesn't mean they should. And, the law is designed to protect against prosecutions that are clearly political. This is not what you were just talking about. This is not what we all think about when we think about trespass, going into a neighbor's yard and, causing some damage in there and being told to get out and ignoring it or coming back for no reason other than, just selfish behavior. Here, that's not what's happening, and they know that's not what's happening. So not only do they use the law because they can and sort of, bastardize its use, but they also up the ante, and they don't just charge trespass, they charge conspiracy to commit trespass. In California, the prosecution has the discretion to charge a conspiracy as either a misdemeanor or a felony. And what they've done here is they've decided to charge it as a felony and completely up the ante, completely taken what is clearly a justified entry and remaining onto a premises for the purpose of rescuing sick and dying animals and turned it into a felony. Under the theory that these activists made an agreement, they made a plan, and then they took some steps to carry it out. It's not how the law is supposed to be used, but the short answer is they've done it because they can.
And do we know how much time they can spend behind bars if they were convicted?
On the trespass, the misdemeanor, it's up to 6 months in jail for each of the two trespasses that are still being charged. On the conspiracy to commit trespass, which is a felony, they could get 1 year per conspiracy. If they are convicted of the conspiracy charge, it will sort of consume the trespass. They can't get a year plus 6 months for each factory farm. They can only get 1 year. but they face a maximum of 2 years under the
And that's a
conspiracy
long
charges.
time. 2 years is a long time. I want to go to Curtis. Curtis, what is the reaction amongst those supporters who are there? We saw that there were at least 40, maybe more supporters who have converged, coming from all over the country. Some even come from foreign countries I've seen in the past, because they're supporters. What's their reaction to all this?
I think at this point in time, because this is not everyone's first vegan rodeo here, that everyone pretty much, someone expects this. It's surprising and it's not surprising at the same time. We were pretty shocked, in Utah when they tried to gag us on all these things and tried to make it so this evidence couldn't be in. But now this is kind of our third big go at this as an organization and as a collective. We are unpleasantly not surprised by the proceedings here. And I just wanted to say thank you, Jane, for having this panel and continuing to elevate these trials. Again, the major news outlets are not, so appreciate you. And thanks everyone else for being on the panel. And especially Donnie for shouting us out at the Animal Rights March that happened last week or this week. I don't know the exact days, but I saw on Twitter you shouted out at the march, elevating this trial. One other last thing I'll mention here before I take off, because I got to get going. We got another action that we're going to be doing. If you're upset by this legal system and how slow it is and how awful it is, we are trying to go about shutting these places down another way. And this campaign actually begins here in Sonoma County tomorrow. We are launching a ballot initiative with a broader coalition to ban CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, the technical term for these factory farms, here in Sonoma County. And we've got roughly 6 months to collect 30,000 signatures here in Sonoma County. And if and when we collect those signatures, everyone here in Sonoma County will vote in the general election in 2024 whether to ban these facilities or not. So we could use a lot of help here in Sonoma County collecting the signatures. So again, this whole campaign, it starts tomorrow. We're going to begin collecting the signatures tomorrow. We just got the final okay from the registrar of voters and the county officials here. So they're going to try to put our friends in prison for investigating and exposing these places. We're going to take this to the voters and try to shut these places down.
Wow. And imagine how they feel when they find out, oh, while the trial's going on, these folks are also doing a ballot initiative and raising signatures to ban the very factory farms that are at the center of this case. Talk about just relentless. I just can't even tell you how relentless that sounds. It sounds very relentless. There's a comment here. It's a long one. And I just want to read it because people are commenting left and right. And I think this one's very interesting. I'm a DXE monthly donor. I feel compelled by Judge Basaglia's unconstitutional actions to increase the amount of my donation. I am sitting at DFW on the way to SFO to visit family. I grew up in idyllic Marin County, neighboring beautiful Sonoma County. Growing up pre-vegan, I thought of Sonoma County as a kind of sleepy, natural, open space. Yes, I'd heard of Petaluma, and it was called the chicken capital of the world. It was decades later that I would truly understand the horrific meaning of that slogan. Wow. Really well said. What is the reaction of folks to that comment? Starting with Renee King-Sonnen.
Well, I understood explicitly what she meant when she said chicken capital of the world. When we rescued like 15 of those factory farmed hens from a chicken operation that was shutting down in Colorado, when all of these same kind of hens were dying in their own feces. They were cannibalizing each other. They were having to go in and just kill all these chickens because the owner of this farm couldn't feed them. They were freezing. So instead of, didn't even have the money to euthanize or gas them. So what do? They go in and just start killing them. And so brave activists got together and talked to sanctuaries all over the United States. And I saw firsthand what those chickens look like. We had to go into critical care for those 15 chickens when they arrived in the middle of the night with, all the activists they had on, the flashlights on their head. These birds had to have immediate care. And, and then once I went and rescued, you remember Omen, when Ryuji and I went to the chicken farm in Arkansas and rescued Omen out from underneath a chicken farm truck. There were thousands of these chickens in that truck, and little Omen we found underneath it. Ryuji scooted underneath there. We were in the middle of broad daylight. We got that chicken. She was huge. We took her all the way back to Texas from Arkansas, and Omen became she became a voice for all those hens, just like those hens and those ducks. We must continue to spotlight the cruelty that's happening in these farms. Let's just continue to make it real, to spotlight it, to die for this cause. If we continue to shout out to the world that we will die for this cause and we'll shine a light on it, then it'll happen.
Well said. I want to go back to Carla. Carla, there's a convergence that is also part of this. So instead of just showing up for a trial, you are hearing that the activists who've gathered are being proactive and they're going out to do things. I don't know how much you can tell us about what they're doing. You saw at least 40 of them gathered in front of the courthouse. And I want to say, as a journalist, I think it's obscene that there's no mainstream media there. This should be on the cover of the New York Times, and sometimes they do cover when there's a verdict. So I do want to give the New York Times a shout out. They are actually the exception to the rule. But I mean, it should be on CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, with the climate change crisis that we're having, if nothing else, because this is such a huge contributor to climate change. This is a very relevant trial. There's the free speech aspect. There's also, the list goes on and on of the social issues that the issues at the heart of this case affect. But what's happening with the activists there, Carla?
So everybody is packing up, and I'm going to be heading out soon as well. We were not expecting court to be done now, but since it is, we're going to head early, and we are going to Petaluma Poultry right now to hold a vigil. And we're going to be doing this twice during the course of this trial, at least. So everybody is getting in cars and heading out right now to go over to Petaluma Poultry, and we're going to hold vigil for all of those beautiful chickens that are about to be slaughtered. We're going to, as was said, we're going to continue to shed light on the atrocities that are happening until we can get them stopped. So I'm not sure how long you're going to be on. I'm going to head over to Petaluma Poultry now, and maybe I can bring you live footage from there.
Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, we want to say at Unchained TV, we invite all the corporations, any corporation mentioned or even not mentioned, anybody who wants to comment, you are invited on at any time to comment on anything that's been said here today. We would love to dialogue with you. Secondly, I feel that if you get there in time, our coverage ends in about 15 minutes. Why? Because I have to go to another protest here in Marina del Rey. And it's a totally different subject. It's about an effort to destroy LA's last coastal wetlands, the Bayona wetlands. They're calling it a restoration, but it's actually a bulldozing. And we've gone to court to fight the plan to bulldoze the Bayona wetlands, and it's a phony restoration. So we're having a demonstration on that. It never ends. But what I would say is get a couple of videos or a couple of short videos, 30 seconds, and text them to me. And next time we cover, I have to just ask you, you're saying that we don't even know when jury selection is going to start?
Yeah, it sounds like it's very possible that jury selection may not even start until around the 26th. The judge is definitely going to make sure that anybody who is selected for jury is available until well into October, the first 2 and maybe even the 3rd week of October.
And okay, what a strange thing. Is there any explanation from the judge as to why she just decided to say court's over for the day when it was supposed to be a lunch break without discussing the request for the gag order, without starting the process of jury selection? I mean, this isn't a murder. Well, some might say it is a murder trial, but it's not officially a murder trial.
I mean, the judge has made it clear that there have been a lot of changes to the schedule. Different attorneys have not been able to be present for certain days. There are holidays. Her schedule just keeps changing. So we're having to just roll with it. And it's not going to be until the end of the month that this courtroom is really dedicated to this trial. So I think until that happens, that's why everything is getting pushed. And can you guys hear me? Oh.
Yes, we can hear me. We can hear you, Carla.
Okay, so yeah, one of the other things that happened today was that the judge had Priya and Wayne, they waived their right to a speedy trial, because usually I guess it takes, you have 60 days, but just to be sure, she had them waive their right to a speedy trial in case this takes even longer.
What? And Donnie Moss is commenting, Friday afternoon, early start to the weekend. Donnie, you are cynical, but you probably have a point. Can you comment on what your thoughts are about the real reason that all this happened?
The real reason that they cut out of court early?
Yeah, I mean, look.
That was my first instinct when they said it was, that court was adjourned for the day. It was like, yeah, it's a Friday afternoon. Probably the prosecutors and the judges and the judge want to go to their, country houses for the weekend. I don't know if that's true. That was just my immediate brief instinct.
Well, look, I do personally believe, and I'd like to get a round robin on this. We've got 10 more minutes. I personally believe that there's a strategy here in spreading out the case. As I mentioned, as a reporter, I get assigned to a trial. Okay, I was assigned to certain trials. I'd go there and I'd stay. If the trial drags on and on and on, it's harder for a news organization to assign a reporter to a trial because there's limited resources and that reporter isn't covering anything else. So if they have to take these huge breaks, it's not brain surgery to figure out that makes it more challenging for the media to cover. Then there's no photos. Then there's no video. Then we learned today, shockingly, that somebody was doing a little sketch who happens to be a good sketch artist. And the judge goes, no, I'm taking that away from you. Add it all up. And Lindsay Baker of the Action Hour, what do you see? And unmute.
Excuse me, I see suppression. I see intimidation. And it's not going to work. It's just not, like I said earlier, it's just not going to work. It's only going to shine a bigger light on the subject. But I also think possibly the judge is hopefully made a mistake. And she's overreaching or being overly zealous for whatever reason. It could be ego. I don't know what it is. But it seems like she's making decisions that in the end are going to help the defendants out, because there's no logic, or it doesn't seem, I don't know what the right word is, it doesn't seem to fit protocol of what should happen. So that sort of puts it in the spotlight, in my opinion.
So I want to get back to one of the key facts. This has been going on for 5 years. It was 5 years ago that a slew, over 100 activists went into these 3 different factory farms and took out a total of 70 chickens and ducks. It's taken them years to get to this point. And then literally almost on the eve of trial, the prosecution drops all theft and burglary charges just before trial. And then the judge says, well, Now that we're not dealing with theft or burglary, the conditions inside the factory farms are not relevant. You get where I'm going, but connect the dots for me, Nathan, because we got to spell it out for people who may not be aware. It may sound like legalese, or it may even sound like, oh, they're doing nice things to the defendants. They're dropping the charges, but I doubt it.
Now, this was not done out of the goodness of their hearts or to cut them a little bit of a break because they did this out of compassion. No, this is being done purely because they have paid attention to what has happened in other trials, and they know the playbook. They know what juries are going to look at, and they know historically that juries have acquitted on these burglary charges and larceny charges and the arguments that prosecutors have made in the past. So what they've done is they've tried to make it easier for themselves. This has nothing to do with doing anybody any favors other than for themselves. So it doesn't surprise me. I suppose tactically it's smart on their part to do this. But, I was thinking about this today. I think they're doing us a favor because, if history serves as any guide and we can get another acquittal here, it's going to send a message to future prosecutors that none of these charges are going to stick. The juries are trying to send a message to law enforcement and prosecutors that we're not going to convict people of trying to save animals who are clearly dying, clearly sick. And when we learn about it, we being jurors, when we learn for the first time what's really going on behind these, behind these walls, we're appalled by it, and we are not going to convict people who are charged with trying to help the animals.
Now, let me say that you're referring to two recent trials, one in California involving former Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul and her co-defendant Alicia Santurio, and another involving Wayne in Utah, and he also had a co-defendant, that there were acquittals. And so this was a huge victory for the animal rights movement. It was actually first considered an open and shut case because Wayne and the others videotaped themselves going into the Utah factory farm and removing piglets, and not only videotape themselves with 360-degree cameras, high-tech cameras, but those videos were then given to the media. The New York Times actually played the videos in an article, and it was only after that the prosecution decides to arrest them and charge them. They were found not guilty in Utah of all charges. And then you had more recently the trial of Alexandra Paul, and she was also acquitted on a whole bunch of, she was acquitted of, her and her co-defendant were acquitted, and I'll show you the actual video of the crime in progress of taking 2 chickens off of a slaughter truck. There you see them doing it. That's Alicia Santurio, and there is behind her the former Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul. They actually videotaped this and released it, and they were put on trial in California, and not so far from where this is all happening now, and a jury acquitted them. So one of the reasons why they want to drop the theft and the burglary charge, according to what Nathan just said, is that they don't want to have to play the video that shows the crime being committed, because that would show the terrible conditions of the animals, according to the defense. And then the jury is likely to say, well, as they said in this case, why didn't you take more? That's what the jurors said after they found Wayne not guilty. They said, why didn't you take more animals out? So when you see something like that, it really sends a message to the prosecutors. So that's why those who are here on this panel believe that, and I'm trying to get rid of that photo in 1 second, they believe that the real reason, there it goes, that those charges were dropped is not out of the goodness of their heart, Ellen Dent. It's because when jurors who are, most Americans consider themselves animal lovers, when they see what's really happening in these factory farms, they're appalled.
Yeah, and they deserve to see the truth. And, I'm appalled that they were asked to not, have a speedy trial, where they also asked not to have a fair trial, because that's how it's sounding right now, from what we're hearing so far. And, I think that's exactly what happened. People saw the truth, just like that comment earlier from that individual who supports direct action everywhere. She saw the truth. She grew up in this place. She thought it was serene and beautiful. And, then you find out like the dark, ugly truth behind animal agriculture, the farms there that they don't want the public to see. And I just really find it appalling so far, this whole situation, this whole trial. And, I'm hoping that they pick a good jury that's going to see right through this.
Oh, okay. So before we go, we only have 5 minutes left. I want to ask our panel about jury selection and how important that is. Donnie Moss, we've just heard that jurors in 2 recent cases, it was jury trials, and they acquitted the defendants and even said in post-verdict conversations, well, why didn't you take more animals out? So is that the terror that this prosecutor has, that it's going to happen again? And that's why, by dropping the theft and burglary charges and the judge saying, well, that makes the conditions inside the factory farms irrelevant, they feel like maybe they can find a way to put away these 2 leaders and quote unquote cut the head off the snake without having to deal with the reason that all of this is happening.
Well, here's the thing. That type of suppression backfired in the Alexandra Paul and Alicia Santurio trial, where, you showed the footage of them rescuing 2 Foster Farms chickens. They were, again, prohibited from showing what goes on inside of these farms. And not all that did was beg the question among the jurors of, well, if the defendants want to show what's going on inside of these farms and the prosecution doesn't, we want to know. That was really, and I think it was the same with the Wayne Shung and Paul Pickelsheimer trial, where they wanted to show what was going on inside and the quote crimes they committed, and the prosecution didn't want them to the crimes to be shown. The juries are skeptical of this, and so I just can't help but wonder if the prosecution and the judge, if they're shooting themselves in the foot again, like we've seen in the past. I mean, the truth will somehow prevail here. The defense will somehow get their point across, and the jury will somehow be asking questions about why this footage isn't being shown.
Yeah, and Patty Ramos says, cut the head off the monster, not the snake, poor baby. No, I'm quoting what somebody on the prosecution team reportedly was overheard saying, that they want to cut the head off the snake of direct action everywhere. That's why they've let everybody else go except for Wayne Shung and Priya Sahani, the 2 co-founders of Direct Action Everywhere. Here's the woman that they let go speaking about her case.
The prosecution went from charging me with 8 felonies to nothing. This is a win for the right to rescue. Just days before I was set to start trial for helping to rescue animals, the prosecutor says he's dropping my charges. I've been facing these charges for half a decade, just for trying to help animals suffering criminal abuse at factory farms in Sonoma County. But as the trial got closer, Deputy District Attorney Robert Weiner has apparently been getting cold feet about prosecuting animal rescuers. He's made better and better offers to get us to plea out, and after I turned these offers down, he dropped my charges anyways. But that won't stop me. I'll be there at trial to support Priya, Wayne, and the right to rescue, and I will keep taking action to defend Rose, Bruce, Ching, May, Libby, and so many others who have not yet been rescued.
Yes, and somebody else says Priya and Wayne are no longer DXC leaders, but they are the co-founders of Direct Action Everywhere. And yes, Wayne is defending himself. Okay, we're out of time. We're just going to do a quick round robin. Everybody give us their 30-second thoughts on this, starting with Ellen Dent.
I just want to say, we notice how they're going out there and they're doing this out in public for everyone to see. This isn't the ALF. They're going and rescuing these individuals, where everybody can see them because they believe that this is the right thing to do. And so do we. I agree with that. This is the right thing to do. The right thing is to rescue these individuals. I hope that the media sees this story. I hope that the jurors in the future look this up. I hope they also see this story on Unchained TV. I hope that they're able to make that connection with these individuals as the individuals that they are. And I hope that one day we will very soon see the right to rescue not be criminal. And we won't need to rescue other individuals from farms or slaughterhouses.
Renee King Sonnen, you're well said. Renee King Sonnen, your final thoughts.
Well, thank you. I think their strategy is going to terribly backfire because people are seeing that behind the curtain, they are seeing that these animals are sentient. They are making the connections. When cattle ranchers go vegan, chicken farmers go vegan, and their stories get out there, people are seeing this happen. And now these trials out in public, people are going to start, just absolutely requesting the truth because these animals are being killed. They are not things being torn apart and put in a package to be sold for food. That is not what this is. These are animals that had sentient lives, communities, families, loved ones, and the right to live. The right to rescue will prevail.
Well said. All right, we're going to go to Lindsay Baker. Your final thoughts.
It's funny when you use the metaphor of the monster's head being cut off. It reminds me of the movie Men in Black when the insect, they cut its head off or shot it, and all these other insects came out and attacked them way worse than what they had expected. And I think that's a great metaphor about what is happening. And the only other thing I want to say is we are the voice for these people now. The media is not covering this, so it's on all of us in every way we can, social media, however, talk about this to people. And I'm certainly going to share out clips from this and whatever else we can get our hands on. And I think that's what we can all do. Thank you for having me.
Well said. Well said. Donnie Moss, your final thought.
Yeah, the prosecutors in this case know how deplorable the conditions are in these Sonoma County factory farms. So horrible, in fact, that they don't want a jury of people from Sonoma County to know what's going on behind closed doors. And to me, that makes these prosecutors complicit in the real crimes that are taking place in these factory farms. They know the truth and they're hiding it from the public and protecting the real perpetrators of these crimes.
Oh my gosh. Well said. Everybody's on a roll. I want to go to Nathan, and we're going to give our live contributor the final word. Nathan?
I was thinking that what's the expression that if factory farms had windows, then nobody would eat meat? Well, what I think we're seeing also is that if a light is able to be shined inside of this courtroom, then injustices would be revealed. And, what we're seeing here is a prosecution and a judge doing everything possible to keep the public from seeing the inside of a factory farm and seeing the inside of a courtroom. For a person to have a sketch taken away is just not what this country is supposed to be about. It's not what the Constitution says. And I hope going forward that there's a real change in how this trial is conducted. There's a week for this judge to reconsider the gag order, and there's some time for her to consider allowing note-taking, drawings, and maybe some pictures and maybe some video. I don't suspect we'll see that, but maybe she'll recognize her errant ways.
Wow. Okay, another home run. Carla, you have the final word.
Wow. What can I possibly say to top all of that? I first want to thank you, Jane, and everybody here for elevating this story, for being on the front lines and covering this trial. The truth will out. That is what I have to say. The corporations can try to hide what's going on. They can attempt to cut the head off the snake, but animal rights is a Medusa. There are snakes all over the place. Animal rights organizations are everywhere. There are thousands and thousands of activists who are willing to go out there to make sure that people see what is happening. And as we've seen with these other trials, when people actually get to see the suffering and the abuse and the exploitation of these beautiful beings, they will not stand for it. So we will be here. I will be with you. Thank you so much. We're going to make sure that every bit of this gets covered, that we bring you everything that is done, and we hope that you will join us at Unchained TV along for this entire ride until the end. No matter what happens, we will prevail for bringing the story of these animals forward.
Thank you. Wow, everybody has just hit home runs talking about this. I want to end by saying thank you. I know you're all very busy people, and I want to thank you for taking the time. Carla, you out there in the heat, the climate-induced heat that is the result of animal agriculture. Thank you for everything you do. And yes, we are, it would appear, certainly the only news organization covering this live. And it would appear that we're the only news organization doing any in-depth coverage at this moment. So please support us. You can download Unchained TV right on your phone. We are a nonprofit. It is absolutely free. So just download that Unchained TV from your app store for free. You can download it on your phone. You can also download it on your television via Amazon Fire Stick, Roku device, an Apple TV device. If you have any of these little devices, you just go in and put in Unchained TV, and you can also download it right on your phone for free. Just go to your app store, because you know what? You can text this. This video is streaming right now on Unchained TV if you're watching it on Unchained TV, but you could be watching it on social media. We're putting out as many places as we can. So what I'm saying to you is text this to somebody who says, oh, you know, they're free range eggs, or, oh, the meat I buy is from a good, I'm very careful. These things have been said to me. I'm very careful about where I get my meat. No, there is no way to kill an animal who doesn't want to die. And this story has to get out. Back in times of history, we know that people would write things and nail them to a church door, or they would take notes and surreptitiously hand them out. That's in essence what we're doing. We're literally doing what those activists of history have done, except we're doing it with social media. So please help us spread the word on Unchained TV. We will be back the next time they're in court for anything significant, like jury selection's been achieved, opening statements, closing arguments, obviously the verdict. So stay with us for continuing coverage. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great day.